if people are really born to something. But I think if I was born to anything, it was probably to start a ballet company and boss people around. Right from the start, I realized that the teachers had to be helped. Because if we didn't have good teachers in Canada, we wouldn't have a good ballet company. Of course, I had Betty Oliphant to help me, who was a brilliant teacher. She could train a dancer from scratch. I couldn't. I could take a professional and turn that professional into a super professional.
Celia kind of turned us into dancers, whether we were straight-legged or bow-legged or had good feet or not.
I had never studied ballet. I remember calling my father and saying, "Dad, I've decided to become a ballet dancer and give up law." There was a long pause.
At that time, the company was really a family. And in order to get that far in that much time, we did a tremendous amount of work.
I had to get them into a cohesive style. I had 6 weeks in which to do it before we opened in November.
She established such a pure sense of musicality and refinement of movement and port-de-bras that really became the identity of the company.
Imagine in 1951. It was such a different world. And on the 12th of November, a rainy evening, the National Ballet of Canada launched at Eaton Auditorium.
But there was not enough work in Toronto to keep the dancers working. So we had to tour. There was no question about it. We had to tour. The money was always the big problem. What can you do without money? There was still a lot of work to be done to get the public on our side, to expose the company. So the touring was very, very important.
What's extraordinary is how quickly Celia Franca established a classical base for the company. And the other thing she did is she did make room for creation. And of course, with Grant Strate, who she made the first resident choreographer of the company, that edge of creativity, of doing new work, has always been there.
It's one thing I insisted upon right from the start: live music.
Every company has a different place in its culture for its music. And Celia's commitment to bring George Crumb, the founding music director, even as a little startup venture in 1951, to insist upon live music from the get-go, this established the musical culture into the DNA of the National Ballet of Canada.
That was one of the great gifts of working here. We have such wonderful orchestra and magnificent musicians. And every aspect of this place has what Balanchine believed in, which is absolute commitment to the artistry of the art. And so in 1961, Celia wrote to Mr. B and said, "I would love to do some Balanchine."
When the company moved into the O'Keefe Center, the tickets in the back row of the balcony were $1. So my parents were able to bring my brothers and sisters, and it cost $6 to go and see the ballet. And I got to see, in that 1964 season, Romeo and Juliet.
Grant Strate wrote to me. He had gone to Stuttgart, seen it, and said this would be wonderful for our company. So I immediately got hold of John, and he said yes.
Romeo and Juliet by the choreographer John Cranko was seminal for the National Ballet of Canada, because what it did was discover this amazing dramatic depth in the company. And John Cranko, thanks to the wonderful creative relationship that Celia had with him in London, came to us to teach his incredible production. We are the only company that Cranko ever came to on his own. 1964 was a turning point for us. Erik Bruhn came to the National Ballet of Canada, and he mounted his production of La Sylphide. Erik's word and his example set the gold standard in the world of dance. And then came his truly innovative Swan Lake. It was a revelation, not only to work with him, but to watch him dance. For us, he opened the door to a world we couldn't possibly have imagined. When you think about it, 1972, this was the year where the National Ballet of Canada thrust upon the world stage on both sides of the ocean.
It's really a marvelous opportunity for us. At last, we're going to perform in the capitals of the world. I think it is part of any ballet company's development is to perform internationally.
For Celia to be able to take the company that she had sort of been sent away to found and take it to London and show what she had done was a very, very big deal.
And it was incredibly important for Ninette de Valois and all of the people in the Royal Ballet and the Sadler's-Wells that Celia came home with her company.
I always thought she was meant to be a director of a company.
It was very, very soon after that that everything changed.
Rudolf Nureyev strode into our studios and we started to work on his Sleeping Beauty.
I remember exactly when he walked into the studio in St. Lawrence Hall with his boots and his toque and his scarf around. And
with Rudy, we came of age and we grew. In some ways, he woke us as dancers with the kiss that changed our lives.
What he brought to this institution with his knowledge, with his enthusiasm for the art form, with his ability to teach us to be even better dancers.
I remember something that Rudolf Nureyev told me. He said, "I can't pass you down my knowledge by always talking to you." He said, "Watch me, learn." He said, "Dance is passed on from hand to hand."
He infused in everyone this courage, this brave, bold, but refined sense of movement that helped them understand their potential.
It's such an honor to have danced Sleeping Beauty with this company. This ballet holds such an important history for the National Ballet of Canada. You just feel that even entering into rehearsals, the weight that it holds and the importance that it holds. You look inside the costumes and you see Veronica Tennant, you see Kain, you see Nadia Potts, Vanessa Harwood, and you have this feeling of honor and responsibility stepping into these roles of a time that was very important in the National Ballet's history.
In 1974, when Baryshnikov was performing at O'Keeffe Center, there was no talk of the defection until it happened, and then Misha showed up in a studio.
Dancing with Mikhail Baryshnikov, La Sylphide, at Ontario Place. The stands started being seated by people at 7:30 in the morning, and they grew and grew and grew until they were up into the hills, and I understand that there were 14,000 people and counting. The world knew that this extraordinary event was happening, and it was happening right here in Toronto.
As of the end of this season, I am resigning as artistic director. Although I'm going to drop my title of artistic director for the National Ballet Company, I still feel it's my company. I will feel it's my company when I'm in my grave.
At first, we couldn't conceive of a National Ballet of Canada without Miss Franca as our director. And then, considering their shared lineage, it seemed absolutely right for it to be Alexander Grant. And in 1979, Alexander took us back to London. We were the first Canadian company to perform at the Royal Opera House in Covent Garden. Alexander was Frederick Ashton's protege, and this meant that he could bring us a wonderful repertoire. And maybe the biggest gift of all was that delightful La Fille Mal Gardée.
Erik Bruhn was at one time the artistic director of the National Ballet of Canada, and he was probably one of the toughest mentors I had.
He saw something in me that I didn't see and gave me such an incredible start.
We were just so inspired. He would tell us before every show, dance like it's your last time. Then afterwards, he went to every single dressing room and just thanked us all for our performance.
Working with Erik was really a unique time in the company's history because it really was the first time we had a major premier dancer running the company, and someone that, as a male dancer, I totally idolized and aspired to be what he was on the stage.
I think because we're the National Ballet of Canada, we have to try and should try somewhat to be all things to all people. And by that I mean to represent a wide spectrum of what one can do in the classical dance idiom.
Under Reed Anderson, for me, the big thing was the Cranko ballets that he brought to the National Ballet of Canada.
Reed gave me every confidence and opportunity. He saw me in different ways, and he saw different sides of me.
When I joined the company, we were doing things like 6-week tours of Asia and 4-week tours of Europe. And as a young artist, it was really so phenomenal to have those experiences dancing in stages around the world.
He was so worldly. It seemed like he knew everybody in the world, and everybody welcomed him and therefore welcomed the National Ballet alongside him.
At the same time, James Kudelka was becoming the resident choreographer. What was interesting that I was always building on what was there before. You felt like you were being part of something bigger because you were adding to the history of the company.
If we ever came close as a company to having our own Frederick Ashton or Kenneth Macmillan, it was with James Kudelka.
One of the things I learned from Reed Anderson was the joy of finding talent and developing it. So I did have the luck of having Guillaume Côté, seeing Nan Yu here at the school do one diagonal in Les Sophies and going, yes, I think I want that person here.
He really saw a career that I could take off, and he really laid down the pathway for me.
The James Kudelka era for me is all about creative pieces. All of us in the company were involved in the creative process.
I don't remember a time when I worked here where I felt as profoundly emotionally affected by his creative process.
And I remember this team who were making out of nothing. They were making this piece of art that was just the most incredible thing to watch come to life, and I was in the middle of that.
For the dancers, we really felt like we were unique. We were really Kudelka dancers, and we did his work like nobody else could.
What I'm most proud of about my time with the company was working with James Kudelka.
One of the most unique experiences that I had creating with James was when he was creating the Four Seasons.
It's the last ballet I did, and it's sort of a nice arc because it's a journey of a life.
If you think about it, for somebody who spent her entire career in this company, she has so much love for the company, so much respect for the history of the company. So it was very exciting to be here and have somebody who could pass that on to her dancers.
I got inspired to expand our vision a bit more in what we did. I had experienced so much wonderful exploration of different choreographers that I got to work with, and I felt that I wanted to try to do that for the dancers of the next generation.
I mean, different choreographers bring different things to a company. How smart of Karen Kain to ask Crystal Pite to do a ballet for the company. Wayne McGregor's Chroma was a pretty transformational piece in terms of the way it made the dancers move. Creation is so important for dancers.
She brought in some of the greatest choreographers, from Marie Chouinard to Crystal Pite to Alexei Ratmansky and John Ermeyer, of course.
Returning to the international stage was so important to me because as a Canadian, I wanted the rest of the world to know how wonderful the National Ballet of Canada was.
It's really a moment of pride when you get to present your company and your family internationally and kind of say, like, this is what we've been up to. This is what ballet is in Canada.
And for me, it was one of the most fulfilling parts of my job with the National Ballet of Canada.
To me, the National Ballet of Canada is not just a company. It's a living, breathing act of imagination. It means honoring legacy while dismantling the idea that legacy is fixed. It means rethinking what excellence and success can look like. Whose stories get told on our stages and how we hold space for artists, audiences, and communities. At 75, we're not just arriving at a finish line. We're waking up, stretching out, and asking, how can ballet be more porous, more responsive, more alive? To me, the National Ballet of Canada is a place where tradition and transformation dance together, and where the stage becomes a site for both beauty and change.
Hope Muir brings a very distinct contemporary vision to the company. It's not something that takes it away from its classical past, but shows how that classical tradition can be mobilized in new ways moving forward, whether it's the actual technical aspects of the movement itself, or things like how do we tell a story.
When Hope joined the company, there was a fresh breeze of air. The repertoire she's bringing to the company really challenged the dancers to be more versatile.
I know Hope quite well because we used to be at the English National Ballet in the 90s. And so I was thrilled and I felt honored when she invited me to stage Don Quixote. And I think I have a grasp of this kind of knowledge that I want to pass on to the dancers here at the National Ballet of Canada.
It's been extremely exciting. The dancers are so generous and they have an incredible sense of humor, care, and they're extremely connected to their physicality and their passion.
This place feels very much connected to the joy of dance.
Hope has an excellent eye. I trust her implicitly. We both have this need to further ballet.
Hope recently appointed David Dawson as our resident choreographer, which is very exciting for the company. David is someone who likes to push boundaries. He excites the dancers. He's very demanding, and I say that with love. He's ready to push this generation, and I think it's very exciting.
Hope and I connect because we have the same vision of what dance can be now. We have the same kind of emotional world that we live in, but also we're both quite strong.
Hope has ushered in a new era of inspiration for us as well, through opportunities and different choreographers.
To carry on the tradition of the National Ballet of Canada, but also at the same time to really head to a new bright future of this company.
With art at the center of all that we do, we're working to build a repertoire that is distinctive, courageous, and resonant. One that keeps us on the world stage, not just as a national treasure, but as a company known for relevance, risk-taking, and artistic excellence. Celia Franca founded this company with a vision that was nothing short of audacious. To build a world-class ballet company in Canada in 1951 took extraordinary courage, conviction, and imagination. That spirit of bold ambition still lives at the heart of the National Ballet of Canada today. While the context is different and the questions we ask as leaders have evolved, I feel deeply connected to her drive to create something lasting and meaningful. If Celia Franca built the foundation, I see my role as opening the windows, letting in new light, new air, and ensuring the house she built continues to grow, transform, and inspire.